So this is the beginning of our genetics unit. So we're going to talk about the basics of genetics. So we're going to start with our twins and clones, same or different. So you always want to have in the back of your mind, could twins and clones be the same? Or are they different? And we're going to think about this from a genetic standpoint. So genetics first involves reproduction. So it has to do with the genetic material that is passed from a parent or parents to their offspring. And offspring equals babies, but we'll often refer to it as offspring and not necessarily babies.
Hey buddy, can you say hi? Say hi.
No.
Hey, can you look at the camera for a sec? Dinner, look for a sec. Can you look at the camera? Yeah. So, my son has blonde hair, blue eyes, and we don't know if he's righty or lefty yet because he actually switches hands, or right now he's drawing with two hands, when he writes. Oh no, Ainsley. Ainsley also has blonde hair and blue eyes and marker all over her, and she's too young to know what hand she writes with. Turn around. Look up. Hey, look up, look up, look up. Yeah. Oh. And my husband and I, oh, that wasn't good. Both have darker eyes, like hazel brownish color, and dark brown hair. Or mine's kind of light brown.
So, as you saw in the video of my children, they're completely different from my husband and I. My husband and I write with my right hand and my husband writes with his left. So it'll be interesting to see what hands our children will write with. Right now my son currently writes with both, and since Ainsley's too young, she uses both as well. So we're first going to talk about the first type of reproduction, which is asexual reproduction. And that means there's only one parent. A common organism to talk about is the sea sponge. There are lots of different types of sea sponge, but they typically bud, or part of them falls off and it lands on the either lands on coral, rock, part of the ocean floor, and begins to grow. And that's kind of how part of a sea sponge reproduces. So if it's asexual reproduction, that means that they only have one parent, and that means their genetic material is identical to their parent. So there are other organisms that reproduce asexually. A lot of these organisms also reproduce sexually, and that just means that they can have a lot more of them, like strawberries. Many of us love strawberries, and so they shoot out kind of like little vines that'll begin to grow their own plant, and it begins to grow roots, and once it especially gets cut off from the parent plant, those roots grow deeper and it can make more strawberries. But strawberries also flower as well. Some types of fungi, depending on the type, will reproduce asexually and sexually in unicellular organisms. So this is made of one cell, remember, and they just split their cell in half and they make two new cells. Hydra is also another organism. It's a microscopic organism that'll reproduce asexually as well. It does not reproduce sexually. So there are advantages and disadvantages to asexual reproduction. They have a lot more offspring or children, but there's not much genetic variation. So it's exactly the same as the parent. So it's no different. And then sexual reproduction means that there's two parents, so the offspring are not identical to either parent. They may have traits that are the same as one parent or the other parent, or traits that are similar to both parents, but they're not genetically the same. Their DNA is different. So we have a lot of plants, so I included strawberries in this one, tomatoes, sunflowers, trees can all reproduce sexually, and that's why we have a variation of them. So if you think of the different colors of tomatoes that are out there, the different size of sunflowers, if you've seen them, the different colors of tulips that you see, the different heights of trees. allows for much variation. The same thing for the animal kingdom. You have different breeds of dogs and cats and horses and so on. Even before humans kind of intervened in the breeding of dogs and cats and horses. So again, there's advantages and disadvantages. You have two parents that raise offspring in a lot of cases, not in all cases. Some offspring just hatch from an egg and have to make it back to the ocean like turtles. And there's more genetic variation, so there's a wide range of variation from children to parents to grandparents, and if you keep going down the line, sometimes this can help get rid of some types of diseases if people are sort of immune to them. A disadvantage, however, is there has to be two people, and it takes longer to sort of have offspring, and then more genetic mistakes can happen, and that happens at the genetic level, or the DNA in our cell can actually make mistakes. Cell division, which we didn't talk about too much in our last unit, but cells do divide at the cellular level. That's how you are going to get taller. Your bone cells are going to divide to make more. Same with your skin cells will divide to make more as well. Muscle cells to make your muscles stronger, and so forth, so that your organs inside grow bigger as you grow taller. And so this means that the DNA that was in one cell is the exact same DNA that's in the other, because cells just split in half. So that's considered asexual reproduction. So that means the offspring are exactly like the parent. And you want that when you're making yourself taller. You don't want your cells to be completely different. So vocabulary words. So I started to put some here, and they're all sort of in your binder on the handout that you got the other day. So DNA, it tells an organism what its traits will be. It's inside the nucleus of our cells, and in there are chromosomes, so the DNA sort of pairs off into chromosomes, and the DNA is found in a nice coil. An allele, which we're going to talk about, is one variation of a gene, and we'll definitely need to know about alleles when we complete Punnett squares or figure out the probability of having one trait versus another. And a trait is something that is expressed, usually physically. A gene is a part of a chromosome, kind of similar to an allele, and it helps figure out who we are as well. So the nucleus is where all the DNA is kept. And there's a lot of DNA in that nucleus. It's amazing how tiny it is for all that information that's stored there.